That is.
So welcome, everyone. Our intention this morning is that you experience a profound sense of God's love and God's laughter and God's joy in this service, and we hope that every aspect of this service blesses you as much as it blesses us. So welcome.
Amen. Amen.
Now is that time in our service, a time of prayer and meditation. So if you have your cell phones with you, I want to encourage you to either place those on silence or vibrate. And Christian will lead us in our meditational song.
Truly the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and God's grace. I can feel the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I invite you to take just a few moments to turn inwardly and to acknowledge the power that is in those words. Because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when two or more are gathered together, there is that presence, that Spirit of God that is always there, but it is enhanced and it is magnified. And it is personalized in each person in this room. So as you take a deep breath and get comfortable in your seat, I invite you to let go of all your cares and concerns. Set aside all of your plans for the day. Just give yourself permission to be fully present to these next few moments. As we each in our own way explore that personal inner space that exists at the very core of our being. That place where we are completely at peace with our world and with ourselves and with those around us. That place where we can shut out all the external noise. And literally feel the energy of the quietness. That place where all inner storms are calmed down. We can rest in that silence. today as we go forth into this beautiful day. We give thanks for the Spirit of God that embodies each and every person on this planet. We give thanks for the Spirit of God that underlies everything in the universe. We give thanks for this community and for the gifts of love and laughter and joyfulness. We give thanks for all the people who bless our lives in so many ways. For these blessings and so many more, may we be ever so grateful. And so it is. And amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Good job. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you, and welcome to everyone who tunes in and watches us online. And a special shout out to Nancy Davis, who watches us from Clinton, Missouri. Welcome, Nancy. All right. So this little girl was attending her first wedding ever. And during the ceremony, she leans over and whispers to her mom, "Mom, why is the bride dressed in white?" And the mother replies to the daughter quietly, "Because white is the color of happiness. And today is the happiest day of her life." And the child thinks for a moment and then says, "So why is the groom dressed in black?" Bad joke, bad joke. All right. Applaud. Okay. Oh, I'll even take sympathy applause. It doesn't matter. I'll take any way I can get it. Everyone of us wants to be happy. So how many people here would like to be happier and more fulfilled in at least one area of your life? Anybody in one area of your life at least to be happy? And how many people know that even though you want more happiness, that you still tend to hold back and live more cautiously and rather than living full out? How many people still hold back a little bit? You know, the fact of the matter is, if we want to live, we want to live happier lives, and yet we still hold back. And the truth is, every one of us knows if we want to be happier and live fuller lives, we need to be more brave, more bold, and more daring in going after our dreams. That we need to have the courage to risk, the courage to reach out, to try new things, to think in new ways. We need to have the courage to be true to ourselves, the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to live more authentically the life we have come here to live. And the fact is, no matter how bravely, how daringly, how courageously we live, at some point we will all still fail. We will still at times fall and get knocked down and feel beat up by life, feel disappointed and still feel hurt. And the question is it worth it to keep risking and living so courageously? And the answer is yes. Because I will tell you, there is something powerful about learning to rise after you've fallen. There is something that nothing else in life can teach us about ourselves and what we're made of and the great gifts that are in us and what we're capable of than learning how to rise and get back up after we have been knocked down by life. Today we are wrapping up our series on Brené Brown's book, Rising Strong. You know, rising strong to me is a spiritual practice. Rising strong is a requirement and a prerequisite for growth, and I believe it is one of the key paths to living a happy and more abundant and joyful life. To rise strong means to get back up from our falls, our mistakes, and face the hurt and pains we feel in a way that will bring us more wisdom and help us live more wholeheartedly. And there are three phases to rising strong. It is the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. The reckoning is walking into your story. The rumble is owning your story. And the revolution is learning how to rewrite a new ending to your story. So let's look back at what we have gone over the last couple of weeks. First, in the reckoning, there are two simple steps in the reckoning. And the first one is just to recognize and acknowledge your emotions. And that sounds so simple, doesn't it? But the fact is, in our culture, we tend to be a little bit emotion phobic. We are afraid of our emotions, and we don't like our emotions. And there are three reasons we don't like to feel our emotions. Number one is that we, at some level, think emotions are weak. They're for the helpless and the weak and the hopeless. Second is we think emotions aren't very helpful. You know, don't get so emotional. It'll get in your way of thinking clearly. And the third one is that emotions are uncomfortable and they're painful. So sometimes we don't want to feel them. We would rather avoid and pretend and hide and deny and project and blame rather than take time to actually feel our feelings. But the first step in rising strong is just to acknowledge our feelings and say to ourselves honestly, I feel hurt, or I feel diminished, or I feel rejected, or I feel shame, or I feel pain, or even I'm feeling some weird stuff and I don't know what's going on. Just recognizing that we got triggered, recognizing that some emotional hurt or pain or discomfort's going on is the first step. Because if we want to rise strong, we got to learn how to feel and how to deal with our feelings and our emotions. Second step is to get curious about what's the story behind the feelings. What's the connection between my feelings and the thoughts? What's really going on with me? And then that takes us into the next step, which is the rumble. And the rumble is just getting a little more curious about what's really going on and becoming aware of the story that we tell ourselves when we get hurt. The story we tell ourselves when we get disappointed or crushed or feel frustration. And one of the things about human beings is we make stuff up. That when we get hurt or disappointed by what somebody says or doesn't do or doesn't say, that the human mind wants to make sense of it, so we start making things up. And our initial story that we tell tends to come from a level of emotion and self-protection. And so in that moment, we make stuff up, and that means most of our first reactions and the story we tell aren't accurate. They're not well thought out, and sometimes they're not particularly kind. Every one of us has a storytelling mind, and most of our stories are negative and fear-based, and they're kind of conspiracy stories, telling us about who doesn't like us, and they did it because they were trying to be mean, and they're just trying to mess my life up. Anybody ever make a phone call or send an email to someone in 3 days, you haven't heard from them, and you start making up stuff like, God, that's very rude. I wonder if they're doing that on purpose, just to bug me for what that incident we happened last year. You know, I don't like that guy. And I don't think he's such a jerk. How could he do that? 3 days later, you get a phone call and he says, hey, I've been out of town on a family crisis and so sorry I missed your call. Anybody ever tell a story and they found out it wasn't true? Anybody ever? Okay, about 4 of us. Okay, that's good. We do it all the time. We look at TV and commercials and pictures on Facebook and make stories up like, man, that guy's got an easy life. My life's so hard. His life is so great and mine is so boring. We make stuff up all the time. So this Christmas, I got 3 joke books. And I started making up some stories. One wasn't enough for me. I had to make up 2. The first story was like, oh my God, they hate my jokes. They think my jokes stink and they think I need help. And the second joke is, they love me so much and want to keep my jokes going, that they want to make sure I don't run out, so they gave me 3 books more. I can tell you, you can guess which one I lean more towards. But we make up stories all the time, and they're usually not true. And sometimes they're not healthy because they're usually reflecting some idea that we're not good enough, or that people don't love us, or something must be wrong with me. We make things up all the time. So I ask you, what story did you make up this week about something your spouse may have said or not said? What story did you make up this week about your work or your job situation? Because what happens is we repeat these stories over and over again. See, I knew he'd say that. I knew that wouldn't work. And what happens is story patterns become mental patterns, and mental patterns become life patterns. By the law of attraction, if we keep thinking these stories over and over again, that are how unworthy we are, how we're not good enough, we tend to attract more of evidence of the very same thing. Having the same arguments, same disappointments, same struggles with money, because we're stuck in our story. Is this making sense, everyone? We get stuck in the story. But the truth and the fact is, we make up stories. I make up stories. Together, I make up stories. And I know there's one person in here who just said to themselves, I don't make up stories. And that's a made-up story. I make up stories. That's just the truth. Let's say it again. I make up stories. And most of my stories are not true. Together? And most of my stories are not true. They're just not. They're stuff we make up. But here's the good thing, is that all of our stories are important. Because embedded in those stories, as uncensored and irrational or as childish or whatever as they may come out, is that they're important because embedded them is the answer to our healing. They're the answer to opening our hearts and living more wholehearted lives, to feeling more compassion, and to feeling more connection. The thing about our stories is we need to capture them in their rawest form. Like I felt so angry, I felt diminished like a 3-year-old child, and I just wanted to punch that person. Or I felt so upset, I just wanted to run away and hide and cry under my bed. Whatever it is, as raw as it can be, the rawer the better, because that can help us get more to the truth of what needs to be healed and liberated. And it's important that it is written. It needs to be written. Studies are showing that writing is very therapeutic and very healing. James Pennebaker wrote a book called Writing to Heal, and it's about the power of the healing power of expressing yourself in writing. To literally just expressing yourself in writing puts it in a way that we can understand it, grasp it, and help heal and transform from it and move beyond it. Just getting it down makes a difference. You know, research shows that if you write for 15 minutes for 4 days in a row of any emotional upheaval, that it will reduce your anxiety, your level of depression, it'll boost your immune system, and here's the most interesting thing. When you write it down, you think about it a lot less. You are less consumed and obsessed by the thought by just writing it down and releasing it. And I'll tell you, I've told you over and over again, I've been journaling. I never used to do it except for the last 5 years, and it is amazing how liberating it is. When I write down, I feel hurt about this or disappointed by that or sad about this. It is amazing how liberating it is. Now, sometimes New Thought folks think, no, don't affirm anything like it's not affirming, it's releasing. Because often it gets stuck when we just keep it there. You have to find a way of cleansing and releasing. So just getting the story out and owning it and realizing it's not the whole truth. And then the second one is asking yourself some questions like, am I making assumptions here, or is there something more I need to understand about the situation, about the other person, about myself? And it's funny because there's a difference between the original story and the story that you come to understand about yourself when you ask the questions. And that's where the healing is. That's when you discover what your triggers are. That's what you discover what your reactions are. And you see the patterns, and they tend to control us much, much less. The reckoning, the rumble, and now the revolution. Every revolution begins with a vision. Every revolution begins with an idea that there's a better life for me. There's a better way for me to show up. There's a better version of who I am. There's a greater way for me to be engaged in all my relationships. Just Having a vision. All revolutions begin with knowing we can have a better life. And the next thing about revolutions is they tend to be a struggle. They tend to be a resistance. They tend to be a defiance because it takes strength and courage to fight against our past and all of our ideas of who we are to live authentically who we are and to connect with our true worthiness and just be honest with who we are. And it can be a revolution of a huge transformational change that revolutionizes how we see ourselves, how we show up in the world, how we engage and interact with other people by getting connected with the stories. But here's the thing, is the revolution doesn't happen by just doing this process once or twice. The revolution only takes place by making it a part of your life. A regular, consistent practice that every time you get triggered emotionally, you say, woo, I'm feeling anger or sadness. And you get curious about what's really going on. And then you write your story, the story I'm making up is, and you look at your story and you ask yourself some questions and do it every time you get triggered. Because it's not a one-hit wonder. It's not a one-stop shopping. It is a process of how we address and deal with our emotions and feelings on a regular basis. And the more we do it, the more we'll cleanse out some of that stuff. The deeper discoveries and awakenings and transformations happen, the more consistently we do it. Brene Brown's been doing it for a long time, and she tells a story that she was at a speaking event, and she saw a woman pushing through the line and getting all the way up to her. And she could feel that kind of aggressive energy, and she came up to her and said, hey, I want to book you for a speaking thing. I go and scout speakers for my company, and they like people with credentials, even though I don't think people with credentials are the best speakers, but I go and get them anyway. And I think I'm really a great speaker, but I don't have credentials, so they don't hire me. They can't see all the talent that's right in front of their face. So she has that interaction, and she's happy to leave. And then 3 days later, she gets an email from the lady saying, the company wants to hire you, and then writes a little PS. And it says, just a bit of friendly feedback. If you're going to position yourself as an expert and scholar, I think it's important that you should pronounce your colleague's name correctly. You quoted Pema Chodron, but you said Pema Chodron, but it's really Pema Chodron. Love and blessings. And so immediately that triggers, and she is like, my God, how rude is this woman? And she's just getting steamed, her heart's racing, she's getting angry. She calls her some names I can't say in church. She thinks to her story is, oh my God, I made a fool of myself. I'm a scholar, and I made a fool of myself, and I didn't say the woman's name correctly. And then she's so angry, she said, I'm going to write her back, but I better not do it in email. I better do it in Word so I get spell check, so I don't make another mistake and embarrass myself. So she writes this scathing letter, and as a part of her letter, she wants to copy the woman's boss. And so she calls all her friends and asks her 5 friends, and they all agree on 2 things. Number 1, that the woman deserved to be called that name that I can't say. And then the second thing was, do not send the letter. She still wants to send the letter. So she goes to her therapist and reads the letter to the therapist. The therapist doesn't say anything for 5 minutes. Then finally the therapist looks at her and says, so how do you want that woman to feel after she reads your email, and especially reading your email knowing that her boss was copied? And she responds and says, I want her to feel small. I want her to feel stupid and found out. I want her to feel ashamed, afraid, and not enough. I want her to feel like an imposter who's been found out. And so she starts, as she's saying it out loud, she realizes that for her, it triggered her in not pronouncing that name properly. It triggered her own shame. And she admitted what she was feeling was small and stupid and found out. What she was feeling was ashamed and afraid and not enough. What she was feeling was that she was an imposter who had been found out. And what she found out from this discovery was that the things we're judging other people by harshly, at some deeper level we are holding against ourselves. The thoughts that we're holding about ourselves or others, if we're about others, we're holding about ourselves. Stuff we're holding about ourselves, we can only see in others. And it's only because she was doing it so often that she got a deeper breakthrough and awareness like that. And you know what that did? It helped her have more compassion for herself. It helped her have more compassion for the other person. And it opened an awakening to see some of her patterns or hurts and how she could better handle that and recognize that earlier so it doesn't undermine her. It doesn't keep her stuck and keep controlling her life. The fact is, the only way we can have a revolution is by doing it consistently, because it shows us what needs to be healed, shows us what our wounds are, what our triggers are, and how we can better move to a level of wholeness. You know, the word wholeness means to feel integrated. And the fact is, many of us don't feel whole because there are parts of us we disown. Parts of us we reject, parts of us we want to hide and deny. And the more you hide it and deny it, it'll come out in sideways. It'll come out in all kinds of strange ways. But the more we're willing to embrace and look at those areas of hurt and pain and move through them, we're actually liberated from them. That wholeness can only come by embracing all of our feelings, all of who we really are. Carl Jung developed an idea called individuation, and here's what it says. Individuation is the lifelong project of becoming more nearly the whole person that we are meant to be. The person that God meant us to be. Not our parents, not our tribe, not our ego. And while revering the mystery of others, our individuation summons us to stand in the presence of our own mystery and become more fully responsible for who we are in this journey we call life. That the whole process is to get back to the truth that we are whole, complete, and not lacking in nothing. That we are already born whole, created in the image and likeness of God. That we are the temple of the living God, but we don't see that because we bought into stories that we keep repeating over and over again. And the more we move through the stories, the more we'll get back to our whole self and to live more wholeheartedly and more freely and more joyously. I am whole, complete, and lacking in nothing. Together. I am whole, complete, and lacking in nothing. Just take a deep breath into that. And could just own that truth that you are whole, complete, and lacking in nothing. Now let's say it half voice together. I am whole, complete, and lacking in nothing. Take a deep breath and see how that feels. And just a whisper now. I am whole, complete, and lacking in nothing. Deep breath. And one more time, full voice together. I am whole, complete, and lacking in nothing. And that's the great truth. That is the great truth. And one of the things is we need to start right where we are within ourselves. Right where we are to connect with this wholeness. Carl Jung said this, he who looks outside dreams, but he who looks within awakens. If we want a whole life, we can't be looking outside to other people. We have to start right here. Because when we look inside, we will awaken. We will find the wholeness here. And when we do, then we can start bringing it into other areas of our lives. Like one of the things I loved is they teach their kids how to do this. They teach them the phrase, the story I'm making up is. That when things happen and they get triggered, they make that up. So their daughter, they told her she can't go to this music festival. And then the daughter came and said this, the story I'm making up is that even though I study hard and help around the house and try to be a responsible person, you still don't trust me enough to let me go to the festival, and I'll probably never get to go. And the parents, I just think that's so powerful and beautiful. And the parents got to say, you know what, we do trust you, and we do appreciate you, and you do great things. And this decision has nothing to do with your behavior. It has to do with us wondering the kind of people that are at the festival who might be drunk, and it might not be a safe place for you. We know you love music. We love music. And one day you might get to go, but it's not today. And so here's the thing about it. So the disappointment's still there, but here's the thing. They got to be heard. They got to be listened to. They got to understand and not have the story that they don't trust me fester. And you know what? Then they feel a closer connection. Just sharing that. Because in relationships, we make up stories. In families, we make up stories. Could you imagine if we created a safe place where in our relationships we could say, the story that I'm telling myself is. You know, my brother and his wife and his 6 kids do this. They do that thing from Star Trek, Permission to Speak Freely. And it's a military thing as well. And so it's like a thing. It's like, okay, I got something heavy to say, and I don't want to get in trouble for it, but here's my... And they give each other permission to speak freely. It's the same thing of saying, the story I'm making up is... Could you imagine in your relationship with your family if you begin to practice that, the story? But you have to create a safe place and being willing to listen empathetically and open your heart to let both people have their feelings. Even at work, we make up stories. And she was having a board meeting, and then they moved agenda number 5 because they were running out of time to the bottom. And then 5 minutes later, one of the guys says, hey, can we circle back? And circle back is a powerful thing. So everybody put down their pen and listened to the guy. And he said, the story I made up about number 5 getting moved to the bottom is that it's not important and it has no priority. And I am the one that's in charge. I'm putting all my time into that. And so what I feel is a little diminished. And if it's not a priority more, then I'd like to know. Now, it turned out, she said, well, it is important. The reason I moved it back is because it wouldn't have had enough time, and we'll need to address it again. But either way it was so cool that they created that space just to say, you know, the story I'm making up is. And again, by doing it, it doesn't fester, and guess what? They all feel supportive and more connection. Would you be willing to practice the story I'm making up is, and begin to own that we're telling stories and look at the stories to help liberate us and transform us in greater ways? Every one of us wants a happy life and deserves a happy, happy life. And the truth is, a part of a happy life means that we will fall and fail at some point. Emotions are messy and they're not comfortable or fun, but don't let them scare you. Don't run from them. That will make life harder and continue some of the negative limiting things. Walk into them and own them. Recognize them. And when you do, they will liberate you. They will heal you. You will be more wholehearted, and you will live and become the person you've come here to be. A happier, healthier life exists for all of us if we're willing to do the work in the reckoning, the rumble, so we can enjoy the revolution and all learn how to rise strong. God bless you all, everybody.
God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is.
As we sing our song of peace. God bless everybody. A great day and a wonderful week.